that was in the legislation.
So the state could previously...
Okay, folks, we'd like to get started. Good morning and welcome. My name is Paul Grogan. I'm the president of the Boston Foundation, and it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here this morning for this very important conversation about what is underway in public education in Lawrence, Massachusetts. This event is being co-sponsored by A Better City, the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, the Massachusetts High-Tech Council, the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education, the Massachusetts Competitive Partnership, Mass Insight, and Boston Leaders for Education. And I particularly want to thank our good friend Mike Tuke, who really had the idea for this forum and has helped us put it together and get this great crowd here this morning. As you know, the Boston Foundation is Greater Boston's community foundation. We are a nearly 100-year-old charity with $900 million in assets. Last year, we and our donors made grants to nonprofit organizations in Greater Boston totaling $98 million, which makes us by far the largest grant maker in Boston and in New England. But in addition to our grant making, as you know, we like to provide opportunities like this one to examine the challenges and opportunities facing our city and our region. And in recent years, again, as many of you know, we have had a particularly keen interest in urban education, and there has been a lot going on. Many of you joined with the Boston Foundation as part of the Race to the Top coalition, which played such a crucial role in getting the landmark 2010 Ed Reform bill enacted, and we see from this vantage point the outstanding results that we are getting both in the in-district portions of the legislation and the new and expanded Commonwealth charter schools, which were permitted in Boston and elsewhere by the new legislation. But nothing has been more significant than what the legislation allowed to happen in Lawrence. And Lawrence, as we know, is a gateway city, a mid-sized urban center that anchors a regional economy. For generations, these communities have been home to industry that offered residents good jobs and a gateway to the American dream. We know that in recent decades, that economic base has atrophied considerably. There have been enormous demographic shifts in the community, and it makes the success of urban public education even more crucial. In 2011, the Lawrence Public Schools were designated as a Level 5 district, and Jeff Riley was appointed as the receiver superintendent. Building on the contributions of many stakeholders, Jeff has developed a district turnaround plan that was okayed by Commissioner Chester, who's here this morning, in May of 2012. And this work is paying off. Students in the Lawrence Public Schools made strong gains in performance since last year, particularly in mathematics. The percent of Lawrence students district-wide scoring proficient or higher in mathematics increased in 2012 and 2013 by double digits in grades 3, 5, 8, and 10. I will leave the rest of the story to Jeff himself, who we will bring up here in a moment. But first, we have the opportunity to hear from Senator Barry Finegold, who is the state senator from Andover, but his district includes Lawrence. And he has been very, very active on the education front himself, including very recently, and we're very grateful for his leadership here. He is the sponsor in the Senate of an act relative to further narrowing the achievement gap, which is very important legislation that is at the State House at this moment, which seeks to build on the great success of the 2010 legislation. So please join me in welcoming Senator Barry Finegold.
Thank you, Paul, and I want to thank the Boston Foundation and the rest of the sponsors for your support in doing everything that you do and making this discussion possible today. What I want to actually do is just kind of give you a kind of a historical perspective of how do we get to where we are today, and then you're going to have the commissioner speak and have Jeff speak. So I've had the honor and the pleasure of representing the city of Lawrence since 1997. The one consistent thing that we've had since then, up until what the commissioner has done and what Jeff has done, is chronic underperforming public schools. I never believed that it was because the students didn't want to learn or that we had parents that did not want their kids to be successful. I felt there was a failure in the system. At the same time, we've had success with our charter schools in the city. We've had success with Esperanza Academy, and I felt like something needed to be done. Probably 6 years ago, I took a trip to New Orleans, and I saw what was going on down there, and I was blown away. I was especially blown away by what was happening with the KIPP schools. And at that point, I said, you know, something like this has to happen, not only in Massachusetts, but it really needs to happen in Lawrence. 2009, the city of Lawrence was basically bankrupt. And we had a decision to make of what should we do with the city. We basically made a decision that we put an overseer. I was part of a delegation. We had a dispute among the delegation. I wanted at that point to take over the schools because we had superintendent after superintendent that has failed, that was not getting the job done. Our test scores weren't going up. Our dropout rate continued to increase, and we weren't seeing any type of meaningful success. We see what happened with Obama with Race to the Top, and then in the state we passed the achievement gap, and now finally there were some tools out there to potentially have what I consider to be intervention in the city of Lawrence. The thing that I consider to be the real tipping point of what made the state have a state take over is when the commissioner issued a report from DOE saying, this is a chronically underperforming schools, there's serious problems, and we had that to say, okay, now we need help. But that's frankly the easy part. It's sometimes a political will to get something to happen is the hard part. Most communities would never allow a state intervention to happen. They would fight you tooth and nail. But to the mayor's credit, he was open to the idea of state intervention. He was not willing to have the same status quo continue to happen again and again because we had a superintendent leave us. We needed to find a new superintendent, and basically the batch of candidates that we're seeing were frankly more the same. So the question was how could we recruit a top superintendent and get someone to come to Lawrence, because all the stuff you hear in the news is a real deterrent. And that's when the discussion started about could we have a state takeover. Now, very few governors, very few education commissioners would actually want to take over a struggling school system. And that's why the Patrick administration and Commissioner Chester deserve an enormous amount of credit. At the same time, we finally, in my opinion, had a delegation, a senator, a couple of reps that were supportive. But more importantly, we had a mayor that was not going to fight us. Because most mayors would say to themselves, this is a failure of me if I let the state take over my school system. But what Mayor Lantigua was more focused on was, hey, the kids of the city aren't getting the education they deserve. So we basically finally had this agreement. We went through this battle, and there was an agreement to have a state takeover. But the million-dollar question was, who was going to be this person to take over our schools? And there was really one name that continued to come up, and it was Jeff. And first time I met Jeff, he came to the State House. He had this big, long Fu Manchu. I said, is this the second coming? Is this what we've all been waiting for? But the thing was, when you first started talking to Jeff, you knew this is the real deal. So this has been an incredible collaboration. This is what I consider to be a huge success. And for me, for someone who's been trying to pass a similar thing that's going to go statewide, I've been telling everybody about this great recipe, but no one's been able to actually taste the food. But now we have the data, and now we know it's real. And now I believe that what we've done here in Lawrence, we should do other places as well. Because the one thing I will say to you is I know for sure the kids in Lawrence, the kids in Fall River, the kids in Brockton, they all want to learn. And their parents all want their kids to learn. And there's better systems out there. There's better ways of educating kids. I was at the Leonard School, which now is Up Academy, a couple weeks back. Blew me away. I had the chairman, Sonia Chang Diaz, with us. I had chairwoman Alice Peisch. We were all blown away about what's going on. I know Scott's here, and I know a lot of people as well. And this is what it's about. We have Spark Academy that's doing amazing things with gym and with education. So this is what it's all about. So I'm going to let the commissioner and Jeff tell you more about it, but this is why we do what we do. This is why we want to have success, and it's because of all your advocacy that makes it all possible. So thank you all for coming here today, and I appreciate the support and appreciate all the great things all of you are doing. Thank you very much.
Senator, thank you so much for those remarks, and we continue to look forward to working with you both on issues in Lawrence but also across the state. I did want to mention that forums like this one are made possible by the Civic Leadership Fund, an annual fund at the Boston Foundation. There are a number of contributors to that fund here this morning. I want to thank you for your support. It means a lot to us. This is a room full of some very distinguished people, and if I were to introduce all of them, that would consume the rest of the morning. But I do want to point out that, and this is a further indication of just how significant the Lawrence experience is, I do want to point out that we have the chairman of the Boston School Committee, Mike O'Neill, here. Mike, where are you? There he is, right here. Who obviously has an enormous task in front of him, along with the new mayor, of finding a new permanent superintendent. But they can be very, very deliberate in undertaking that task because of who is in place as acting superintendent of the Boston Public Schools, who is also here this morning, our good friend John McDonough. As the senator mentioned, an absolutely pivotal figure in this story is our Commissioner of Education, Mitchell Chester. We've had the pleasure to work with for a number of years now, and his both courage and commitment to the children of this state manifests itself in so many ways, but very, very importantly in being willing to undertake this unprecedented experiment in Lawrence. So please join me in welcoming our Education Commissioner, Mitchell Chester.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Good morning. What a great turnout. I want to thank, first of all, Paul and the Boston Foundation for hosting this event, because I think it's important, particularly for Boston area folks as well as folks in the other urban areas of Massachusetts, to hear the Lawrence story. It's a story that's just in the front chapters of what will be an ongoing effort. I don't claim at all that we've figured this out. We are figuring it out, however, and the early signs are very positive, the early results, but it is very much a work in progress. I'm going to bring Jeff Riley up in a minute, but I want to call out Shalimar Kies, Seth Racine, Julie Albino, who are with Jeff today, who are key figures in his administration and in the design of what's happening in Lawrence. I want to thank the senator for and legislative leadership who passed the bill that allowed us to exercise this receivership, the Achievement Gap Act of 2010, and the Boston Foundation, the coalition Race to the Top, Bill Gunther's here, a lot of other folks who absolutely advocated for these reforms. And the reforms are incredible. The authorities and the autonomies that are constituted in this act provide tools that are very powerful. We're trying to exercise them in a responsible way. I'm a believer that you don't browbeat people, you don't call them out, you don't tag folks as failures. What you do is you identify where we should be doing better, and you do that when you have a plan in mind for turning that around. One of the things that we've done in Massachusetts that distinguishes us from several other states that have gone down education reform routes is that we have taken a very surgical approach to these authorities. So what you'll hear about in Lawrence is a very deliberate part of the architecture of the Achievement Gap Act, which says that the state has the authority to go deep and to go aggressively in a small number of situations. That's in contrast to a lot of other states that passed education reform acts that were broad in their sweep. So for example, where we have leverage over collective bargaining, which includes Lawrence and which includes the level 4 and 5 districts in the state, that leverage is in a small number of cases where results need to be turned around rapidly. In other states, the legislature has taken a hatchet to collective bargaining across the board. So that's one of the pieces that distinguishes us. You'll get a feel in Jeff's presentation that this is a very creative approach to thinking about what a system of high-performing schools is, as opposed to being first and foremost a school system. This is an approach that defies orthodoxies. It's an approach that eviscerates, that blurs the distinction between charter schools and traditional public schools, that creates new schools and provides opportunities for charter operators to operate within the context of the Lawrence School District. A very creative approach that I think has huge potential for expansion in the Commonwealth. My goal in recommending to the State Board that the state take receivership of Lawrence was first and foremost that we would turn things around for the children of Lawrence. But not far behind that was a conviction that if we do this right in Lawrence, we can set a precedent. We can identify other ways, other practices and policies that have merit across the Commonwealth, not simply in Lawrence. And I think part of what you're going to hear this morning is what some of those policies and practices represent. So it's my pleasure to bring Jeff up, and I'll just tell you one anecdote about Jeff. It sounds like, Jeff, everybody's got their own anecdote about you. I first met Jeff very early in my tenure in Massachusetts, 2008. We had just released the test results, and Jeff was a very successful principal of the middle school, of the Edwards Middle School in Boston. Done a tremendous job turning around a low-performing middle school. We just released the accountability results to the schools, and they weren't yet public. And Jeff felt like we hadn't done justice to his results. So my assistant came to me and said, I've got a principal from Boston who wants to meet with you. I said, sure. Jeff showed up. He had a PowerPoint deck with him. He had his figures, and he was absolutely a powerful advocate for the children that he served. And I denied Jeff his request, but it was a very, very, very civil conversation, and absolutely left for me an imprint on how passionate Jeff is about the work that he does and how strong an advocate he is for the children that he serves. So it's my pleasure to bring to the podium Jeff Riley.
Before I begin, if I didn't point out also two people that are here, John McDonough, who has been a friend and a mentor of mine and is currently the superintendent in Boston, as well as the former superintendent, Michael Contopasis, who hired me as a principal at the Edwards Middle School many years ago, with words that were very similar to the ones he said to me today. Don't screw this up. Michael's a man of few words, but they seem to be powerful when he says them. Let me begin by telling you a story which will seem slightly roundabout, but which happened at the Edwards Middle School about 8 years ago. The Edwards is located in Charlestown, Mass. Kids get bused from all over the city And it's really important in Charlestown, which is a very close-knit community, that you work with the neighbors and the community at large to make sure that the school is well received and the kids are behaving and there's no issues out in the community to and from school. And so one morning, about midway through what is our candy sale, I got an irate phone call from a local neighbor who, when the secretary patched the call into me, was immediately screaming at me, "How could you? This is ridiculous. This is an outrage." And I said, "Ma'am, what are you talking about?" She says, "I can't believe you would do this." And I said, "What are we talking about?" She said, "This candy sale, this is outrageous." And I said, "I don't think it's outrageous. We're just trying to raise some money for the kids." And she said, "Well, this is crazy. How could you do this?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "The price." And I said, "What?" She said, $5 for a candy bar? I said, "Ma'am, we're selling them for $1. And she said, "Well, their kid just sold me it for $5. Now, Anthony was an entrepreneurial spirit in grade 7. And Anthony got in trouble that day with me. But there's a part of me that loved the audacity and the critical thinking that went behind his profit margin. I say that to you because I think that sometimes we need to think outside the box more. I'm certainly not here to sell you any candy, but the receivership actually offered a legal way to reimagine what schools are and how they function. When receivership came about and I was asked to come, many people told me not to come, that Lawrence was too far gone, but I decided to jump in because this is what I love to do. We decided to look at this from a very different lens, though, from the old paradigm. There's a lot of fighting about the right way to educate kids, and we tried to be above that phrase slightly. Lawrence, as you folks probably know, if I can get my machine to work, oh, there we go, is one of the poorest cities in America, and arguably the poorest in Massachusetts. The school system has struggled for decades, marked by low test scores. About half the kids who started in high school actually walk across the stage after 4 years. And there was a lot of challenges. And despite that, I wanted to take the time and really reflect on what was going to happen in Lawrence and assess the situation when I got there. Receivership did give pretty substantial authorities to make change. The district governance was changed. The receiver, that's me, was imbued with all the authority of the school committee and the superintendent. And I report directly to the commissioner, not to a school committee or not to the mayor. And so that was an important flexibility. I think collective bargaining is something that was written into the law so that we could limit or suspend collective bargaining rights if necessary, if we felt they were being an impediment to the functioning and rapid improvement of the schools. And then we got great flexibility around staffing and school design. The reality is I could make every teacher in Lawrence, if I so chose, reapply for their job. I could extend the school day or the school year as I saw fit. And so I was given a lot of tools that I think were the envy of some other superintendents to be able to make some changes. With that said, before I got there, there was calls to destroy the Lawrence public school system. People said, turn it all into charter schools. Someone said this is their Katrina moment, which I felt was slightly disrespectful, but I got the point. But I wanted to take a more measured approach and assess what was happening on the ground. And when I got there, I took about the first 5 months to kind of really look into the school system. And I saw some good things. There were problems. I want to be very clear about that. We had some problems. But I also saw 2 high-performing schools in the district already, some others that were about to break and go into high-performing status. I saw a lot of great teachers, and I also saw some things that needed to be done. And so when we set about making the turnaround plan, we kind of based it on some guiding principles. The first is there are great charter schools and great traditional schools. I was a principal of a charter school, of a public school, that was called out in the New York Times by Randy Weingarten as the counterexample to charter schools. It's an AFT union school that expanded the school day. We had great academics and enrichment opportunities for our kids. Our kids in 8th grade were beating the state average in math and neck in English language arts, despite the fact that we had like 90% poverty, 2/3 second language learners, and over 1/3 special education students. My children attend an AFT, Boston Public School. We eventually got them into the same school after being battered by the Boston student assignment process. Not calling anyone out on that. And so, with that said, I've also seen great charter schools. Quietly, I was friends with Zoya and Goldstein and some of these guys. We always had to kind of talk in secret and have beers because there was such animosity between the worlds. And at the end of the day, what's occurred to me is parents don't care. Parents just want great schools for their kids. And that's kind of the bedrock about what we're trying to do in Lawrence. Also, great schools have to have great teachers and great leaders. The biggest lie in education everywhere, not just urban education, is that all teachers are the same. I had an opportunity to go to Belmont High School. We moved in with my grandparents so I could go to this amazing school system. Now, it's true that suddenly college got on my radar screen. The people that I became friends with, really everyone in that town, they were all going to college. But the teaching there was not particularly great. In fact, there was a wide variation in the teacher quality. There were some great people, there was a lot of mediocre people, and there were some really bad people at this supposedly top 10 high school. You know, Rick DeFore talks about teacher quality. I don't know if you've heard this story before. He talks about a guy that buys an old farmhouse on a country lane, and on half of the farmhouse, he sets up a shop for his taxidermist equipment, and on the other half, he sets up his shop for his veterinary practice. And his slogan is, "Either way, you get your dog back." Now, Rick was not trying to say that our children are animals, but what he was trying to say is what we do in the classroom matters, and there is a difference between teacher quality. I would argue the best performing urban schools, whether they're charter or public, limit that variation. If you've got bad people here and good people here, the best schools do this and have better people at the top and limit that variation so that a school can function well. Educators need freedom and flexibility. I think both John and Michael will confirm that as a principal, I spent a lifetime evading and ignoring the central office. This is a very dangerous path to take unless you're successful. But I felt like to do what I needed to get done, I had to play certain games. I had to know the rules. I had to know how to get around some rules to focus on what matters, which was the teaching and learning in the classrooms every day in my school. It's not to say we have to destroy the central office. I think, unfortunately, in education today, a lot of central offices have become these kind of giant behemoths that move at a glacial pace, that become these giant compliance organizations filled with silos who all think that their particular brand, their particular branch is the most important one. And from up high, they send down dictates to the principals. This has to be done right away. This has to be filled in right away. And so the central offices in many cases have become an impediment to school functioning. What we tried to do in Lawrence is to change the mindset away from schools work for us to we, the central office, work for them. And how can we make their lives easier so they can focus on the teaching and learning? This is a work in progress. It's not finalized, but there are a lot of areas where we can help the schools do what they need to get done and get the hell out of their way. Excuse me, Mom. The two primary models of schools that I see in the country and urban centers these days are traditional district schools, kind of the cookie-cutter model where they kind of all look the same. They all kind of have the same rules and governances. There are a few schools that might have some variations. They might be the people with the swimming pools that you see here. There's a few people with swimming pools. Versus the charter schools, or kind of the do-it-yourselfers, the kind of people that had to put a stake in the ground, like the Oklahoma land grab, and build their own building, or find their own building, and do it all themselves. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's been kind of a Cold War, and it's been a conventional war between these two worlds. And I think it's outdated. And I think that radicals on either side of the equation have made it a counterproductive argument. I don't believe that charter schools are the way. nor do I believe that traditional schools are the way. I believe that there are great schools on either side, and all I care about in Lawrence is great schools. And again, parents do not care. We call our model open architecture. And the idea is that there are certain things that we will help schools do. Things like human resources, we'll hire people for you. Payroll, we'll do that for you. If you need additional supports in different areas, we'll give that to you as well. If you don't need the additional supports, you'll get more white area, like you see in the schools above me. The more white area is the more flexibilities they have. Now, underlying this kind of foundation we laid is this idea that there are kind of uniform rules. And so we are on a level playing field. Technically, there are no charter schools in the Lawrence Public Schools. We have asked charter operators to come in. We've given them broad autonomies to run their school, but we have asked them to take neighborhood kids. There's no lottery. And we've asked them to have their teachers be AFT teachers. I believe in some kind of teacher representation. With that, we've also given them broad autonomy to run their school as they see fit. And so where we can help people with buildings, with certain efficiencies we do, where they've proven they can get the job done, we're going to leave them alone and focus on our other schools that may need or want additional assistance. What this looks like in the micro, if you look to your left, you see Unlocking Potential. Unlocking Potential has shown great results here in Boston and has done a fabulous job for us. And they're one of our contracted schools, and they kind of follow the baseline policies around the enrollment, no lottery, that kind of thing. But they have a tremendous amount of room to fill in their school as they see fit. They set up their school. They wanted to do their own plumbing. They wanted to, remodel the upstairs. Apparently, they've got a man cave because that's how Given likes to roll. Whatever. I don't care. But they're given those freedoms. Another school, Frost Middle School, level 1 school. They take a little bit more from the central office. They have a great veteran staff. We give them some more light support, but not too much, because they're pretty much good to go. And they're ready to take those autonomies and do with them as they see fit. Another school is BMF, which is a turnaround school. We brought in match tutors to come help there, installed a new principal, brought in vacation academies with tutoring. They've had tremendous success. Their math growth, I think, was the highest jump ever, from a 23 percentile to the 75th. But they're not completely divorced from kind of traditional district support. And the Tarbox Elementary School is the last one on the right. They do a lot with ANET. They actually, in some ways, receive the most support of any school. We felt like they could go into level 4. So we gave them the most support, and they had significant growth increases as well. And so we've really tried to be thoughtful about what people need, when they need it, and when do they need to be left alone to do the job that they need to get done. That's the basic theory about what we're trying to do. But we needed to set some certain conditions before we got there. There is no doubt, and I'll talk a little bit about each of these bullet points going forward, but there's no doubt that there were some people there that weren't doing right by children. And so I set out on a fairly ambitious campaign to replace certain leaders, certain teachers, certain central office employees. I needed to cut the bureaucracy at central office. I had to bring in some outside partners to merge with the good people we already had, whether it's Phoenix or Community Day or the different folks that would come in to help us do what we needed to get done. We needed to rethink teacher compensation. The days of lanes and steps, and if you show up the following September and you can breathe on the mirror, you get an automatic pay raise. That didn't seem appropriate to me. We felt like we could offer a career ladder where teachers could still work their way up the ladder if they did a good job. But if you were struggling or you weren't doing right by kids, we weren't going to give you that automatic pay raise. And then we had to bring in some district-wide initiatives that we thought were important. Let me kind of run through some of these quickly. I don't want to spend too much of your time on this because I want to leave time for questions. The teachers. We looked at probably the bottom 10% of teachers and did something called a receiver's review process, where we went in and looked using central office assistant superintendents and principals and other folks, and looked at people that we had grade concerns about. Some of those people were cleared, many were not. and they were either terminated or left the district on their own accord. We felt that putting that pressure on would be important to say that this is a new day in Lawrence. It was a disruptive event. It could have been much worse, but we looked at folks that we were concerned that weren't doing right by kids, and so we had to make some changes there. But the reality is we kept 85 to 90% of the teachers in Lawrence, because I felt like we had some great people, we had some good people, and we had some people that we could develop and get better. And I can work with those kind of people. I think that's a more realistic approach to what's happening in education today, and that you can't blame the teachers for things that sometimes are out of their control. I took a more serious approach towards leadership. We replaced nearly 50% of the principals. We felt like leadership was lacking in the school district and that we had to make change. The good news about receivership is it kind of sent out a clarion call that people were interested in coming and working in this kind of open architecture environment where people who were self-motivated and wanted to have these autonomies at the school level really wanted to come. So we were able to get some really great leaders in to work in these schools. Finally, with central office. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but we reduced the size of central office by nearly 1/3. And people have asked me, well, how are you able to function? And I will tell you that I haven't seen the difference. Let me say that again to you. I haven't seen the difference. We felt that that money is better spent at the school level, that those resources, the almost $2 million we saved by doing this, could now be spent on things like a longer school day, or more supplies and materials, or more ELL teachers. We believe that the unit of change is at the schools, not at the central office. So we did a significant restructuring of central office. Not without some pain, I might add. Let me talk to you briefly about some of the partners we've brought in. Unlocking Potential, as you know, has done great things in Boston. They started this past year with 1 grade, 6th grade last year, and they had some pretty good success in that 6th grade, small number of kids. In fact, they're the only outside provider that had test scores that were added to our mix that were just released. This year, they've taken over the entire middle school, and they've taken over a 2nd school. They're also phasing in that 2nd school, 1 grade. Very pleased with what I've seen there. Phoenix is a great charter school in Chelsea. They've done a lot of great work with dropouts, teenage moms, court-involved kids. This was our intervention for our dropout crisis that we had in Lawrence. And we've set up shop. We've literally, or they've built their own, but we paid for a new building right in downtown Lawrence. They actually got to, when we talk about open architecture, pick out everything from the curtains to the walls to the flooring. They got to do that, and they're running their school right now this very morning. The community group is very well received in Lawrence, has a long history in early childhood, and they have charter schools as well, Community Day. They've come in and taken over the Arlington Elementary School in totality this year. They started by taking kindergarten, 1st grade last year. Spark Academy was not a charter school, but Spark Academy is one of the more interesting contractors we brought in, where a principal and his team came in working with the professor at Harvard, who wrote the book Spark. If any of you have read that book, the fundamental thesis of it is that exercise is the miracle grow for the brain, and that kids who exercise before they go to school actually do better in class than those kids that don't. And so what they've done is they've set up a shop, a school that intersperses high-quality fitness activities in between classes and added extra time to the school day with high-quality academic instruction. And they got some good results, particularly in mathematics this year. I know this is a pretty successful intervention for 2 reasons. One, parents all over Lawrence have asked that we bring this program to their school. And 2, my 5th grade son wants to leave the Boston Public Schools and attend this school because he likes the idea that I'm going to have gym every other period, I'm in. I would say if you do read that book that I would read the first 2 chapters, and the last chapter, the middle of the book, is filled with medical jargon that was slightly beyond my grasp. Perhaps you're better at that than I. And the last group we brought in may surprise you. It was the Lawrence Teachers Union. We've created a level playing field where former charter school operators and the Lawrence Teachers Union will all have the same opportunities to do well by kids. And if they think that they can get a school done and done well, we want to support them. The AFT has brought in resources from their national office. We've remodeled their school for them. We're going to support them in every way, and we want to make sure that we have great schools everywhere. And so we've brought them in as well, and they just started this year. They're going for 1st through 5th grades at the old Oliver School. Career ladder. I'm going to ask Seth to come up when we do questions, but again, moving away from this idea of steps and lanes and automatic increases to a different ladder system where you rise based on performance. This does many things. The first thing it does is it allows us to compensate younger teachers more quickly to be able to retain them. So a young teacher in their 3rd, 4th, 5th year could make $85,000 to $100,000 if they're really talented. And we want to be able to keep our people. This compensation system has made us, I think, the envy of the Merrimack Valley and allowed us to get the best applicants who want to come in. We're even drawings from outside of the Merrimack Valley, people that want to come and be part of this. As many of you know, we lose good teachers within the first 5 years. We think this intervention is going to allow us to keep teachers and allow them to really grow in their profession. When we launched it, we took the money we were going to use for steps and lanes, and we gave a raise to all the teachers. They hadn't had a raise in 3 years. We felt it was really important to value them and to let them know that we care about them. So 100% of teachers in Lawrence this year got a raise, and the way we worked out the compensation, 92% did better under this career ladder in year 1 than they would have under the old step and lane system. Now going forward, we're going to start making some designations. Who is a master teacher? Who is an advanced teacher? What's a career level teacher look like? Et cetera, et cetera. But if you are a great teacher or working hard to improve, you can climb this ladder and get significantly more money faster. And so that's pretty important to us. I'm not going to go over too many of the details on that. I think Seth can speak to it later. But I do want to talk about some of the interventions that we put in place. The Sontag Prize is a program I created when I was in Boston to recognize the outstanding teachers, be they charter, public, or Catholic, in city schools in America. We actually fly people in from all over the country and give them a high-quality professional development experience with people like Doug Lemov and Ben Carson and other famous people that come in at the Harvard Business School and have this kind of Renaissance weekend for them where we wine them and dine them. We give them a great stipend, an honorarium. We give them a trophy, and we make them feel special because I think teachers are the most important thing in this world. And we brought that program to Lawrence. After they get wined and dined, we ask them to come and teach our kids in these special academies that happen at school over the February vacation and the April vacation. And they work in small groups with 10 kids using data to figure out where the gaps are for kids. And it's no surprise that kids that do this program with the best teachers, and in February it's almost exclusively English, so they get about 30 additional hours of English in 1 week. Now your average kid probably gets an hour of English a day. So if you're doing 30 hours in 1 week, you're getting more than a month of instruction with a great teacher. So we shouldn't be surprised that the kids that do this program do markedly better than the kids that do not do the program. Last year we had 1,000 children give up their February vacation and more give up their April vacation to do this. We wanted to instill them with the idea that hard work matters and that we need this extra time to close some of these gaps. The Lynch Foundation has been incredibly supportive in backing this program, and other folks are jumping in as well, as I think they've seen the move to personalized education and away from kind of the broad brush teaching that we see too often still today. This year we're going to double the size of that program. We're going to get more than 2,000 kids into Acceleration Academies in February and another 2,000 in April. So we're pretty excited about that. Teacher Leader Cabinet. This is one area where the union and I disagree. The union has filed an unfair labor practice charge against me for instituting a Teacher Leader Cabinet. That is, I've selected over 100 teachers through an application process to work with me to chart the functioning of the school district going forward. We've given them a $5,000 stipend, and we want to hear their voice. Now, ironically, and I'm still not sure why, the union filed an unfair labor practice charge against me. And I think it's because they're operating under that old model where the 5 people from the district talk to the 5 people on the union team, and they hammer out a one-size-fits-all model. We are moving down to a decentralized school system where we need to have the voices and the experience of teachers to help us lead the district going forward. Teachers are everything. Teachers are our most important resource. And so for us to compensate them and give them a new level, a new opportunity to show leadership, I thought was critical. Too often we lose our best teachers to what Chuck McAfee calls the dark side, which is administration. And we wanted to have different paths so we could keep teachers in the classroom, but they could still demonstrate leadership. And this is something that's new and something that we're very excited about. The last district kind of wide intervention that we used to set the stage was we expanded the school day in Lawrence. We added a minimum of 205 hours. Some schools do more than 300 hours to all schools in grades 1 through 8. We did not do that at the contractually hourly rate, but instead used a tiered approach to offer stipends for the additional time that teachers would work. That, combined with the raises they received, meant a significant bump for all teachers and a longer school day at a manageable rate for our children. And, you know, I want to be clear, I think time is crucial, but it has to be done well. We've seen schools add time and not have success, and it's got to be used well. And that time for me used well, by the way, may be different than how you think about it. It's much the same as I did when I was at the Edwards, where some of the time was directed toward targeted intervention of a student's needs. That is, if a kid was strong in 8th grade in math and English and we knew they were going to be proficient or advanced, I would give them extra help in science, because the 8th grade science test is one of the hardest to pass in the pantheon of MCAS tests. If a kid was strong in math but weak in English, they get extra English help during that longer part of the day, and vice versa. The other half of the time we used on high-quality enrichment opportunities. We had musical theater and step dancing. We had the only middle school football team in the city of Boston. We played all the rich W towns, Weston and Winchester and Wellesley, and the Edwards Middle School. And we were 8-0, my friends. Not that we're competitive. So, you know, we felt like if our kids got the same experiences, if they could perform academically on the test scores as well as a suburban kid, and have the same access to the enrichment experiences, which, by the way, don't always show up on a test, right? And so this is where sometimes I deviate from other people who think it's all about the test. There was a kid named Michael when I was a deputy academic superintendent in Boston, and I ran all the middle schools and K-8s. And I put together a theater program, a district-wide theater program for some of our best thespians in middle school. And Michael was an 8th grader at the Edison, and Michael was profoundly dyslexic. Michael is very unlikely to pass the English portion of the MCAS. Organically, his brain does not function the way traditional students' brains do. And so he struggles with school. Michael also takes care of his little brothers and sisters at home, and he comes to school every day and tries his best. But Michael was cast as Jesus in our production of Godspell at the Calderwood Pavilion, a professional theater that we sold out for 3 nights, and Michael carried that play. And what I mean by that is, not only was his performance exquisite and stunning, his voice unmatched, but when his friends, his co-actors messed up a line, he covered for them. He knew every line for himself, he knew every line of the other kids, and he was able to make it work, such that we had a critic from New York who said to me, after the second show, I believe, if that kid keeps up at this, in 10 years, he's going to be on Broadway. So Michael may not do advanced on the MCAS, but Michael has a rare talent that may not be measured by the MCAS, and we need to make sure that the ability to speak in public. He got up 3 nights in a row in front of 700 people and sang his heart out and carried this play. Don't tell me this kid's not going to do well in school. And so that was really important to use our time for that. Let me segue quickly and talk about the Lawrence Teachers Union. I understand that people are unhappy with teachers' unions. I also think that that all teachers need to be represented and have some representation. And so we've tried to work with our teachers' union. We've tried to take this measured approach. We didn't fire everyone and bring in all charter schools. We actually offered one of our turnaround schools to the union because we believe in enlisting people, not in cutting people down. We've tried to be really communicative with our teachers and let them know what I think. And you see that, I think, through the leadership opportunities of the Teacher Leader Cabinet, or winning the Sontag Prize, where I think in Boston I had a reputation as being very pro-teacher. Because I came up to Lawrence as the receiver, I was viewed more like Darth Vader. And so to be able to get out into the field and talk to our teachers and let them see that, we honor and value teaching was really important to me. And we started that with Sontag, and now we're moving to Teacher Leader Cabinet. And I think it's, you can show that in one way, but then obviously showing that with the pocketbook is another way. And we wanted to let them know that we valued everything they do. Teachers are really going to be the sole determinant of the performance of any school. So where are we? After the first full year of receivership, we're in a decent place. Graduation rates are up significantly. The dropout rate is down significantly. After 4 years of declining scores of English language arts, we are up, both in absolute performance and in growth. And we didn't expect that much growth, but we're very pleased with what we saw. In mathematics, the story was even better and perhaps even historical. We went from an SGP of 40 to an SGP of 57. I think it's arguable that we are one of, if not the most improved school district in Massachusetts. Certainly a great year of improvement. I would argue all this was done, by the way, before many of our outside providers actually landed. So we are in a position this year to have Unlocking Potential have a full school. Community Day is going to have a full school. And so we're more excited going forward about where we can be than what has just happened for us. We look at this in a different way than most people. The traditional kind of top-down, one-size-fits-all model is not how we're trying to do this. We are trying to get as many high-quality schools in the district as possible and tip the district that way. I told you we started with 2. We doubled the number of level 1 schools this year to 4. We think next year we could have as many as 6 or 8. Within 3 to 5 years, we're going to have 12 to 15. And so we're going to tip the district that way so that high-quality performance becomes the norm, not the exception in Lawrence. But it's not going to be at a top-down model. It's going to be bubbling up, both with the people inside and with the outside providers we're bringing in. Here is a look at some of the schools that we expect great things from or have done great things already. As of today, 31% of our kids are in either level 1 schools or in some of our proven provider schools, and so we're very optimistic about where we're going. A few closing thoughts. I want to be clear that I think the achievement gap is incredibly important. I believe in it. When I was a principal at the Edwards Middle School and when our 8th graders actually beat the state average, beat your average suburban kid on the test, that may have been the only time as a grown man when I wept. I didn't weep at the birth of my children, which I think makes me a bad human being. But this was something really important to me and something that I felt I was part of. And it certainly wasn't me that did it. It was the teachers that did it. And just to be able to be part of that was something that was really special for me. And we have to do that both by the achievement gap, which is the test scores, but I also thought those other skills, those enrichment opportunities, were just as important. We've seen some high-performing schools in urban areas where they do better than the kids in Wellesley or Weston, but the kids, when they get to college, fall apart, and they don't get through college in 4 years like the kids in Wellesley and Weston. And why is that? And I would say it's for 2 reasons. First, we didn't give them these high-quality enrichment experiences, and we need to. Our kids deserve the same exact experiences that your average suburban kid gets. And the second thing is, I think we never taught our kids to be self-advocates for their own learning. I've been a middle school principal. I believe in lines. I believe in uniforms. I believe in a highly structured environment. I also believe, however, at the end of 8th grade, we had to teach our kids to be self-advocates for their learning and learn to do it for themselves. And I think in Lawrence, what you'll see from us is we're going to be very structured up till 9th or 10th grade, and then we're going to work with our kids to make sure that they are ready when they get to college to do it for themselves. The idea that we're going to follow children into college and sleep in their dorm rooms with them and tell them when to wake up has actually been floated in education circles. I don't think that's particularly reasonable. I think there's a time when we have to teach our kids to do it for themselves. And so that's the direction that the Lawrence Public Schools are going in. Lawrence is unique in that no additional dollars came with receivership. There are some folks in this room who have provided some startup costs to help us bring some of these results to you today. But there's a lot more work to be done. So we're always out there looking for grants and funding to kind of improve the situation in Lawrence. And then the last thing I want to leave you with, which is not insignificant, is we need to ensure the long-term sustainability of the changes we make so that we bake into the system these reforms, and they can't be undone going forward. And while it's early in the receivership, we're not even 2 years in, we've begun to think about this in a very deep way and spent a lot of time, what happens after receivership? Are we going to bake in provisions that things can't be undone without the express written consent of the commissioner or a poison pill like that? Are we going to be able to offer our outside contractors a deep contract so they don't feel like they can be undone if some school committee or mayor doesn't like what they're doing? These are challenges that we have to face. We've seen examples where state interventions have happened. I can think of one in the western part of the state, which wasn't an education one, where a board came in, kind of righted the ship, and when the board left, everything rolled back. And we can't have things roll back. And so if that were to happen, that would be a colossal failure, and it's something that we need to work on, and we need your support on. So with all of that said, I think there is in the back of your packet, if you were given a packet, people always ask about the bureaucracy and what we cut at central office, and we gave you a position listing at the very back. If you did not get that, we can have some sent to you. I think we're going to open up for questions. Am I over or under my time? Wow, so unlike me. Sure.
Is your colleague joining? Yeah, come on. Jeff, would you introduce your colleague?
This is Seth Racine, the Chief Redesign Officer of the Lawrence Public Schools, the former Chief Financial Officer of the Boston Public Schools. I'm sorry, John.
All right. I am confident that there are many questions. Please, if called on, wait for the microphone, identify yourself, and ask your question, and try to limit the proclivity for extended statements or speeches. Who has a question? Yes.
My name is Ray Stata, Analog Devices here in the area. As you begin to weed out the marginal performers, are there enough teachers around, okay, to fill in? So how do you deal with the capacity when you start eliminating the bottom end? One question, and the other one is, what is your where does vocational education fit in your vision?
Am I still mic'd? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a principal voice, so I can use that too. It's fine. So I think one of the positive things about going into receivership is it really put a spotlight on the Lawrence Public Schools, and there's a lot of interest in the reforms that are taking place there. So we are getting hundreds more applicants in for teachers. And so for Lawrence, I think we're in a good situation where we do have the ability to have great choices for people that are coming into the district. I would say overall as a country, I think we need to do a better job of getting talented people into the profession. But I can't worry about that right now. I'm just going to worry about us. And for us, I think we're at a pretty good spot because a lot of people want to come and work inside Lawrence in this kind of unique set of circumstances. Your second question is near and dear to my heart. I used to be an academy director at Madison Park, a vocational technical high school in Boston. And I believe deeply, much like the enrichment experiences I talked about, whether it's theater, I believe kids have different skills that if you go into to be an electrician or a plumber, you're going to do very well in this world. And I know that, and you know that, because every time we have to call one of those folks, the bill is very large. And so we believe that kids have different skills, and if they want to do that, we want to put them in that. And we are offering different kind of technical programs inside the school system, but we also farm some of our kids out to the greater Lawrence Tech, which has some great programs as well.
Jeff, I'd like to do a quick follow-up on the human capital question. You know, it strikes me that a principal's job in a school with these autonomies is just a much bigger and more interesting job than the traditional principal. Does that create an opportunity, medium and long term, to attract better people to these opportunities?
We've seen a tremendous response from folks that are interested in working under these conditions. Self-motivated, self-starting people who are interested in being kind of more than a principal, but really a CEO, and having more control over the running of their building, and not being bound by some of the restrictions that take place from a central office bureaucracy. And so I think we've had some people come out of Lowell, we've had some people from across the country. People are interested in this idea that they can kind of really put their stamp on their own building.
Great. Okay. Yes.
I'll go without the microphone. Hi, Rachel Hunt, charter school leader and newly elected school committee member in Salem. And I'm wondering, speaking to the other side of Ray's question, if you do in fact bring in talented folks, bring them up, looking at the scalability of the salary pay scale and how that works over time, what's the sustainability, also coupled with the extended year, how do we keep those going in a sustainable way?
Sure. So I think when we looked at teacher compensation, 80% of our budget goes towards salaries and benefits, and for teachers, about half our entire budget goes to teacher salaries. And when we were looking to last spring, we were looking to the next year. We said we're going to have about $3.5 million go towards steps and lanes that we didn't see sort of any real significant correlation to performance. So we said there has to be a better way, and really, how do you really be able to compensate those great teachers that you want to stay in the system? And so that's how we designed this new career ladder and really sort of rethinking how compensation would work, and also over the life of a career for a teacher, so that in the long term it actually would cost the same as a step and lane structure. Now, if you're a great teacher, it won't take you a doctorate and 25 years in the system to earn $80,000. If you're a great teacher now, within 5 years you could earn $85,000. But not everyone's going to get there. It's not automatic. But so we were able to create a system that great teachers over the course of their career could earn over $300,000 more in our new career ladder. And so we also created this sort of extended learning time stipend rates for additional time. We wanted to pay teachers, but we couldn't pay at an hourly rate. It just was not sustainable, and these are also professionals that we wanted to sort of treat as such. And so we created these stipends that allowed flexibility at a school level to sort of, when they're adding time, be able to pay an additional amount, and combined with the 100% increases that every teacher was going to get through the new career ladder, allowed this new compensation system that long term, it's still going to cost the same as our old system, but we now are able to really pinpoint and target compensation to those great teachers.
Great, thank you. Mike? Wait for a microphone just a second.
It's one word, evaluation. Evaluation system. What type of evaluation system have you put in place, and how are you evaluating the teachers to get to those levels?
So our career ladder for the compensation for how teachers move up, it's actually based into the evaluation system, the new evaluation system that was rolled out by the state. When we were looking at rethinking compensation, we were also at the exact same time thinking about how do we shrink central office. We've got to get rid of over 25%. And the worst thing we could do is create a new compensation system that then required us to add 15 new people in HR to try to manage, and add additional responsibilities on the principal to figure out and to explain to teachers, okay, so here's how you move up this career ladder. And by the way, we've been talking about the new evaluation system for the last 8 months. Totally different systems and something like that. So instead, we wanted to merge them together. The evaluation component was critical right away when Jeff came in. As he mentioned before, receivers review and evaluating teachers to make sure that they were on target and performing. And we were also rolling out this new state evaluation system. So we wanted to really make it integral, and so that teachers move up in our new career ladder based on their evaluation. And so if you are exemplary or proficient teacher, you're able to move up, and a principal can also recommend that you move up faster. It's not set every single year here. You have to go and move up one level at a time. But also when we were sort of thinking those top amounts, we had sort of said there's basically 5 tiers of teachers. And the top 2 levels of advanced and master, advanced sort of being a school-wide example of excellence, and a master teacher being a district-wide model of excellence. We said it's not just what happened last year, right? To become a master teacher, that's over your career. And so instead, we've created a new portfolio system that allows a teacher to provide a portfolio of their career and their work to show that why are they a master teacher based on a comprehensive way too. We didn't want to say it's going to be a one-size-fits-all model of if your SGP was this, now you can become master teacher. We said, no, look, it's about principal recommendations, parent recommendations, student recommendations, student growth data and performance. It could be advanced degrees and other leadership opportunities that you've done. And so we really want to make it sort of a comprehensive review to be able to move up to the very top 2 levels of our career ladder.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Deischer with the Hestia Fund. And we've had a lot of change here in Boston. We've had a lot of charter schools. We've spent a lot of money at that. We have a new evaluation system, but still 50% of our students come out performing below proficient. And I'm wondering, from the lessons in Lawrence, what do you think could actually happen here in Boston that could accelerate the improvement and close the opportunity gap here in Boston, particularly under the new administration?
Oh, this is off the record. Don't worry.
So the video camera's off. I think it would be wrong for me to kind of advise another school district on their work. I can only speak to what's happening for us. It's further complicated because I kind of grew up professionally in the Boston Public Schools, so I certainly have my own ideas. And my children go to the Boston Public Schools. So I don't think it would be proper for me to kind of make any kind of pronouncements about the direction or future of the school system. Again, I certainly have my own ideas. I think what I believe in is what you're seeing in Lawrence. This idea of a decentralized school system where the focus is on the classroom and talent, where a school central office pivots away from compliance and moves towards support of the schools and support only, much slimmed down, much more nimble. That's what I believe in.
Great. Yes.
Hi, Jeff. Wendell Knox from Headresters. Very creative use of partners in managing and leading the various schools. I'm curious as to whether you encourage and have created mechanisms for collaboration among the partners, or are you trying to keep the models separate so that you can learn about their relative effectiveness? How are you treating that?
So, you know, what a great question. I think what we've seen before we even had a chance to kind of bring something like that to the fore is there was natural collaboration from the outside folks. I know the Spark Academy people who, again, weren't even a charter school, are talking about going to see Unlocking Potential Leonard, and our principal just had a baby. Congratulations to Como. You know, I would argue Como was one of the best principals that I've ever seen in my life. You know, she probably used to run Excel Academy in East Boston. And so those collaborations were just kind of taking place naturally. And there are opportunities for when principals get together to meet with me, and they're doing it on their own as well.
I think to add on that too, I think what's been critical for us is using our partners to help inform our strategy, both of how do we think about the systems that are needed for them. What do they actually sort of need, as Jeff had talked about, sort of this open architecture model, what are the baseline supports that they need to help us rethink central office, and what do they actually need that's critical for services, and how are we doing operationally? But also for compensation, you know, and if you look at Unlocking Potential, they've got teachers in Boston under their salary structure. How are they able to recruit teachers to come to Lawrence? And as we were designing the new career ladder, as we were thinking about central office, we were talking to these critical partners and helping drive district strategy.
Yes.
Following up a little on the question earlier about Boston.
Could you introduce yourself, sir?
Oh, sorry. Dan Ross with Social Venture Partners, Boston. Following up a little bit, making it more general. Obviously, a key piece that you had at your disposal was the flexibility with the teachers union. How scalable is this model from Lawrence in other communities where they don't have that flexibility? Did the union participate much in the changes that were made? Would the union in Lawrence endorse what happened in Lawrence to other communities and say, you know, you really ought to think differently about your relationship with the school board, et cetera, et cetera?
You know, I think working with the unions often comes down to a trust factor. I had 20 years of fighting with the Boston Teachers Union and then working with the Teachers Union, and I had a relationship where I could get things to happen that we needed, that we thought were in the best interest of kids. Unions are often demonized for their inflexibility. I'm not sure I've seen that everywhere I've been, and I think you know, to be able to have those kind of relationships with people and to work things out, there's always going to be an agreement. But what you're seeing through a lot of this legislation, if the level 3 stuff goes forward, I mean, you're seeing some of these flexibilities that are being granted to folks regardless. And so I think there's going to be an impetus for the unions to come in a more progressive fashion towards the schools and where that's going to be.
Bill? Bill Gunther, Mass Insight. You probably did see Mike Canapasso's editorial op-ed about the Boston schools and a vision for a decentralized system. So back to the point that was made here, as opposed to talking about Boston, comment just on larger urban districts with multiple high schools. And right now there are 2 theories of action. One is fix the district in its current form. The second is devolve down to schools as the unit. But if you think about kids needing a K through 12 system, doesn't it make more sense to devolve down to little K through 12 community clusters and make them the unit of change?
So, I mean, I think we're kind of heading back to what I said the nets we're trying to fly by, which is this kind of reformer versus relinquisher talk. And what we're talking about with open architecture is a different way of just focusing on having great individual schools. We think we need them at the elementary, the middle, and the high school level. We are actively looking, we kind of did a lot of structural reform at the K-8 level in our first year and a half, and high school is next. And I don't want to tip my hand too much about where we're going on that, other than to say that we think our kids need to have a great high school experience, and there are multiple ways to do that. And I think you should just stay tuned for that from Lawrence.
Mike?
Mike Tuke, Boston Leaders for Education. Question on extended learning time. You've made a very flexible approach to your K-8 groups, both in terms of the number of hours. Some schools can have more than others, and obviously, therefore, more money. Could you comment briefly on how you decided who got more resources and therefore more time? And second of all, could you give us an example of 2 different extended learning time programs in your system, just to contrast them?
Sure. I think as to the first question, we kind of, unlike Boston, Lawrence hadn't had a lot of experience with expanded learning time. And so we went through a process of kind of teaching folks, these are the different ways it's been done, these are the opportunities. We gave them kind of a menu of options. You can add days, you can add hours, you can do half days and make a longer day here, and gave them just a tremendous amount of information that we asked that they bring back to their own schools and their own faculties to decide what they felt an expanded learning time day could look like. And so some schools, we set a minimum threshold of 205 hours. But if you want to do more, you can do more. So we have a bunch of schools doing, in the time collaborative, doing more than 300 hours. And the individual schools got to choose what they wanted to do. Again, it wasn't from on high, everyone's going to do this and just figure it out. You've got to be invested in the process at the school level. What works for you? What works at one school in Lawrence does not work 8 blocks away at another school in Lawrence. And we're not going to say it does. We want to hear from the teachers and the principal and the parents what they think is going to work. And so, you know, we have some schools, the different variations, there's wild variations. Some schools are kind of doing outdoor ropes courses at a camp just over the line in New Hampshire. Other schools are at the Boys and Girls Club where our kids are learning to swim. and playing guitar and doing things. So there's just been many different permutations about what this looks like, and I would invite folks to come up and see. It's a, listen, this is year one. We've had some really great things happen. I'm pretty proud, but I am not here to tell you that this is a perfect situation right now. Like any principal, when I was a principal in Boston, every year I would evaluate my outside partners and the performance of my school and say, what do I need to tweak? So in some cases, it was staff inside my building maybe couldn't be there anymore. In other cases, it might be partners that I worked with weren't doing what I needed them to get done for our kids, and so we let them go and found somebody else. But to have that flexibility at the school level so they could make those decisions in real time was important to me.
Jeff, let me interject a question. What's been the hardest thing about this? And what, if anything, has disappointed you?
I think everyone says they want change until change comes. And I think you have to be willing to take the shots and the blows. And there were a lot of people out there that wanted to take the shots from different camps, some of whom are, by the way, blood enemies with each other, were taking shots. And you have to kind of be real in your convictions about what you believe and see it through. I will tell you that after the graduation data came out and the dropout reports came out and then the MCAS scores came out, a lot of that chirping died down because success tends to quiet the naysayers. But we're still early in this game, and if people think that because we had some early gains that the job is done, this is not the job being done. I am not interested in having a school system that is one of the better city school systems in Massachusetts. We are interested in being the only district in America that actually gets our kids on par with the state average on what I would say, by the way, is the most rigorous test in America, the MCAS test. Whatever that's going to be in the future, that's a whole nother discussion. Let's not go down the park road today. But this is kind of the big leagues, right? Massachusetts is serious about education, and I feel like, much like at the Edwards, if my kids can get to that area by the time they're in 10th grade where they're neck and neck with the state average, we'll have done our job and given them those enrichment experiences and taught them how to be self-advocates. That is the dream. We've seen a lot of schools that have turned around. We've never seen a district in America, an urban district, really turn around and close the achievement gap. I know some people down the south think they've done that, but I'm a little more skeptical.
Mm-hmm. Yes, back there.
Johnston with Impact for Education. Jeff, you made a really compelling point about how parents don't really care about the governance structure of a school. Yet I'm struck by, in what you're talking about today, that the management and governance structure of the district has been pivotal to what you've accomplished. So when you think about sustainability of this, to what degree are you thinking that you're going to need to get parents and community support engaged around this model, this open architecture, given that there's still an elected school board, I believe? Or do you have a different idea about how this gets sustained over time?
So that's a multifaceted question. I think first, when I first came there, although I was imbued with all the powers of the superintendent and school committee, I inherited a newly elected board on school committee. If I so chose, I could not meet with them and I could completely shut them down. I chose a different path. I chose to meet with them monthly. It's in a more condensed format, but I felt like it would be disrespectful and not helpful to shut people out who care about education. Now, people have tried to show me when I first got there, you've got to watch the school committee tapes from the past. It's like Jerry Springer. And I don't have time to watch the school committee tapes from the past. But we've got a pretty good board now, and you want to get to a place where if the board is pretty good and acting professionally, eventually receivership's going to end. Now, what's it going to look like after it ends? Will it be an elected board? Will it be, like Boston, an appointed board? Will it be a hybrid? Those are discussions that are going to happen down the line, but it's certainly something that when we talk about exiting receivership that has to be given its due. I think the other question was around parents. When I first got there, there was a lot of discussion that the parents in Lawrence don't care about their kids, they're not invested. Some of this bordering on kind of racist talk. What I found was that, like all parents, parents love their children deeply. And I've never met a parent that doesn't care deeply about their kids. They may not know exactly how to navigate a school system. And in Lawrence, the real problem was, even if they wanted to navigate the school system, they couldn't because principals oftentimes had a wall up. Give me your kid, you stay there, we'll give him back to you at the end of the day. And the reason why we took, one of the reasons why we took such a drastic step in replacing almost half the principals was because we needed principals that were going to be more inclusive with parents. The only way this gets done is if you get people to buy in at the parent level, at the student level, at the government level, at the business level. That's the way the change happens, and it's got to be inclusive. It can't be, chopping people off and thinking that we have all the answers, because that's not really. We think there's a synergy that comes when everybody gets together.
Yes, and this will have to be the last one. Kathy, go ahead.
Kathy McHugh from Edvestors. Given that school system to be sustainable probably has to run essentially on public dollars, I wondered if you could expand a little bit on the role of philanthropic investment in the school system at short-term and long-term.
Sure. I mean, I think the way we've positioned ourselves is that we need foundational support for the first 3 to 5 years, and we're not looking for long-term commitments after this because we want to have a school system that can be self-sustaining and initiatives and programs that can be self-sustaining. That's really important to what we're doing. With that said, when you take on a task like receivership, when we are there maybe 3 districts in the country that have a chance to turn around? And we are one of those 3. We are going to need some kind of startup capital. We're going to need some special projects to be funded. We're going to need to think through these things in a deep way. And so we're going to need the foundation community to really step up and help us with this, with the recognition that we're building this to be self-sustainable.
Okay, we do have a religion, as you know, about ending on time, so that will have to be it. I did want to say, Jeff, that incredibly comprehensive and engaging presentation, but the part that I resonated to the most was your comments about your mother. Because I can admit to you today, I am the child of a mother who was deeply skeptical about my prospects until quite late in life. But I can tell you, I'm sure you did your mom proud. Thank you very much. This has been an extraordinarily productive hour and a half. I'm sure you agree. Keep watching this space. The Boston Foundation is committed to staying with these issues. And I would add that if you believe that this is the direction that urban education needs to go in, there is a critical piece of legislation before the state legislature right now that, as I said, would extend and deepen the extraordinary breakthroughs that were contained in the 2010 legislation. And if you'd like to chat with your state representative or state senator about that, we would welcome your involvement. Have a great day, everybody.